Hey everyone, welcome back to The Future in Mind. I'm Izzy, your Gen Z co-host, and today's episode is one I think all of us really need right now. Before we dive in, I want to introduce my co-host Clarissa, culture anthropologist, storyteller, and the millennial who helps us see the big picture every time we sit down behind these mics. Hey Clarissa, welcome back.
Hi Izzy, and hi everyone tuning in. I cannot wait for today's conversation.
Me neither, because this episode is all about the question, what's your superpower? Not the comic book kind, the you kind. The traits that come naturally, the things other people see in you before you notice them in yourself. And the timing could not be better. In a quick poll we ran last month, 33% of Gen Zers we polled said their New Year's resolutions were specifically about personal growth and development, making it the top category overall. Additionally, 86% of Gen Z expressed strong interest in mindset and well-being themes, not as trends, but as tools for functioning better in everyday life. Gen Z is multicultural, emotionally aware, and very intentional. But they're also reporting higher levels of anxiety and disconnection than previous generations. When someone is carrying that kind of mental and emotional load, it can make their strengths harder to see or believe in. For them, unlocking their superpowers is about creating the internal conditions that allow their natural strengths to show up consistently. They believe performance, creativity, confidence, and resilience come from managing their mental energy, protecting their emotional well-being, defining success on their own terms, and pursuing growth without burnout. The shift is clear. Superpowers aren't forced. They're unlocked through alignment. From Culturati's Gen Z research, we know that half of Gen Z already feels pressure to leave a legacy, even in their 20s. When the mind is regulated, their self-talk is supportive, and their goals feel personal and sustainable, Gen Z feels more capable, more focused, and more in control of their future. That's why this space resonates so broadly. It goes beyond self-help. It's self-management as a pathway to performance and purpose.
Which is exactly why naming your superpower matters. It's more than a self-esteem exercise. It's an act of personal growth. When Gen Z is craving clarity, grounding, meaning, and emotional stability, identifying your superpower becomes a tool for development. And that brings us to today's guest.
We are thrilled to welcome Tania Missad, EVP of Insights Strategy and Analytics at Sony Pictures Television. For over 25 years, Tania has helped shape some of the world's most iconic stories and franchises, such as Barbie, Harry Potter, and DC, by understanding deeply what resonates with people. She leads insights, strategy, and analytics across Sony's TV portfolio, guiding creative teams with a blend of intuition, empathy, and world-class research. But the reason she's here today is because she has a gift. She helps people see the strengths they can't yet articulate and empowers them to own them. And that is pure personal growth. Tania, welcome to The Future in Mind.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
So, in your experience working with younger professionals, where do you see people most often underestimate their strengths?
I think it's always really important to figure out what it is that makes you special and what it is that drives your uniqueness in the world. We all strive for it. We're all trying to search for identity and what is it that makes us unique. And so in the workplace, it's incredibly important. It's important to find your brand and then own it. And as long as it feels authentic, as long as it feels true to who you are, it celebrates unique aspects of who you are, it'll come through authentically in your personal life and in the workplace. That's the most important thing, that it's really true to who you are so that it can ring true when you're interacting with others.
So, when you use the word superpower, what does that mean to you? How is it different from simply having a skill?
One of my philosophies of developing and empowering people that I work with, that I'm happy to mentor on my team, is really getting to know people deeply, really getting to know their passions deeply so that you can put them in places where they'll shine. So what that means for me, like people's superpower combines not just that they're good at something that we all do, because I run an insights and research team. So everybody on my team is good at research. But what makes people unique is what do they love and what are they not only good at, but that brings out a personal passion. So one of the things that we do on my team is when we interview people and when we were deciding what genres of television people were going to get to work on, we interviewed everybody on the team, and anybody that comes in for a new position on our team gets interviewed with the question of, what is your favorite TV show? What is the type of TV show that you love to watch and consume? Because we want people to show up with that element of passion with our creatives. A producer or writer will immediately sniff out if you don't really know their show. So, for example, we have people working on sci-fi television shows, and the people on those genres are devout sci-fi readers, viewers. They know the history of everything from the X-Files and Star Trek to, books. One of our partners is Blake Crouch, and it's a show called Dark Matter, and his books are incredibly followed. And the people on my team that work on that show love Blake Crouch's books. And that way, when we talk to him, he knows that we get it and we get what he's about. And so that's what I mean by superpower. It's sort of like cost of entry to be good at your function, but what is it that makes it like that you're so passionate about that shows up in the work? And my sci-fi genre leads love it so much, and that love really shows up in how they talk about then the research and the work. And we try to combine that. It's like an element of passion. When you're passionate about something, you're so much better at it. And it makes it a superpower.
So, in your experience working with younger professionals, where do you see people most often underestimate their strengths?
What I try to give advice to younger professionals is that their strength is in, we try to, when people come into the workplace, I just had this conversation with a group of students that came to Sony and were asking advice as they're finishing their college careers. And what we try to explain to people in the workplace early is that the first, 1 to 5 years of being in the workplace are all about learning. The company understands that at the beginning of your career, you know less than other people around you at the company. And you're kind of hired for that youthful enthusiasm and that useful like naivete in a way. Because, young professionals are breathing that freshness and that, lack of jadedness in the world into the workplace. And I think young professionals should embrace that, ask the questions. Sometimes when people come in, they want to appear like they know, right? And they know, and you don't have to. And in fact, like we're expecting young professionals not to know, but to ask good questions about why things work the way that they do, about why people have been doing things the same way. Maybe it needs to be shaken up. Like poking and asking the questions and exemplifying and not being afraid to ask those questions early on is what makes young professionals so valuable. I think also being brave to have a point of view and say, like, I'm questioning why, XYZ company has always done it this way, because wouldn't it be better if we did it this way? And even if sometimes the answer is no, you've gotten people to think about it. And you've gotten people to say, maybe there is a better way to do it. And there's a new way to do it that we should be contemplating. So I think that's it. The useful energy creates like a potentials for doing things differently. And you only get to know that if you're brave enough to ask the question and you have that humility of like, I'm coming in and I'm questioning things, but I might not know, and that's okay. And asking the question is the key.
I think that's so important for Gen Z to keep in mind just because they're under a lot of pressure, right? They're under a lot of external pressure, but also internal pressure. And just keeping in mind that they're not expected to know everything and that they can ask questions. I think that's just super important for young professionals to keep in mind as they go into their first job.
I think some of what we talk about too is, this concept of feeling like you have to be perfect. I do think Gen Z has been under so much pressure to be perfect, and showing up as perfect on like Instagram isn't real life. Like it just isn't. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially as you're young in your career. We call it failing forward. It's those lessons of like when you make a mistake, it's such an important moment for learning. Sometimes the things that aren't perfect are the way that you learn, and getting into the workforce, knowing that you are going to make mistakes because you are new, and that is okay. And hopefully you're in an environment where failing forward is embraced. That's really important to know, right? If you start to feel like you've got to show up perfectly, maybe that's not the best place, for you. But in a place that embraces it, because it's part of innovation, it's part of learning, and then being comfortable with it. And that is the key of being honest that you don't know everything, being honest that you tried and maybe it didn't work out as well as you'd hope, but you tried and you learned something new with it. That's really important. We try to embrace that here at Sony all the time, where we embrace the mentality of failing forward. We embrace the mentality of, mistakes are where we learn. And that creates a safer environment for that innovation, for that raising your hand and trying something new, because you can fail and it's going to be okay. We're going to learn from that failure.
As a leader, how do you create space for team members to recognize and lean into what makes them unique?
Yeah, it's a little bit of what we talked about earlier. As a leader, I take very, very seriously the concept of what is your passion. We spend so much time at work, right? In the end, you're going to spend at least 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours at work. And so in order to have that be bearable, you have to work on what you like. You have to work on areas that drive your passion. Work can be really fulfilling, and if you work on things you love. And so I take very, very seriously this concept of passions that we talked about earlier, that we ask people, what is your passion genre? I'm lucky. I get to work in television. Television was one of my passions. I grew up loving stories. I grew up loving great channels like HBO, and where great television came from. And I love good TV, and now I get to work on it. And so for me, I feel so lucky that I get to work in a passion area every day. It was the same when I worked at other places like Mattel. Got to work on Barbie, and I was passionate about female empowerment, and that brand was all about female empowerment, right? And so I got to live that passion with that experience. So you don't have to just be at one place to live your passion, but you should really identify what your passion is early. And I lean into that as a leader. What are people's individual passions? And if we can pair them with their passions at work, then they'll just work better. Like the work product will be better because they're loving what they're doing. And it has so many benefits, like more retention, like people will want to stay at the company longer if they're working on things that they love. So we take that very seriously. We check in with people too. Like if we give a person an opportunity, I'll give you a story on my team. There was a young woman on my team that said she's a data scientist, but she had an interest in doing something less data science-y. And she said, can I try it? And we gave her a chance to try it. And she's been trying it for a year. And she's like, I think that I love data science. And I think that now that I've tried this other thing, I'm more passionate about data science. So can I come back to just focusing on data science? And we're like, yes. Like we gave people an opportunity to explore what might be different superpowers. And she decided that her superpower and her passion was data science. She wants to come back to it. So I think that's what's really important is you have to decide what you love, get really good at it, and then hopefully find a place that embraces you exploring that passion. And then hopefully the company will benefit, you'll benefit because you'll be happy at work, and the company will benefit from like your great work because you love what you're doing.
I guess I hope that I do end up somewhere where I'm able to express my passions and working with something that I love. Like, I think that's probably the dream. I think that's what everyone wants, obviously. But yeah, I think that just makes me want it more.
I think you have to also search for places that see you and are inclusive of you and of who you are, and seek the places that give you the opportunity that you found through school or through exploring things in your personal, like whatever you do, personally as your passion, or at school, the things that most motivated you. I really sought that out for myself. Like I knew I went to a school that was very finance oriented, and I realized I don't love finance. And so I was like, oh no, what do I do? I'm at this finance rich school, and I realized I loved marketing. And so I saw, even though most of the internships coming out of college were finance oriented, I specifically worked harder to try to find those internships that were more related to marketing and audience and research, which I loved from school. And I found the places that would give me the opportunity to do the thing that I realized I loved in college. So I think you also have to work to find the places that might give you that opportunity, right? Sometimes, when you're starting your career, you just want to get a job, so you take any job, and I get that, because it's just the workplace, right? You have to take an opportunity that's given to you. But if it's not what you love, you'll find out really soon, because you'll be miserable. So, then figuring out what are the places? There's going to be lots of places that do things that I like, and try to get in there. That's what I recommend. I knew from a very early age that eventually I wanted to try to get to entertainment, because I loved it so much myself. I love watching good TV, and I worked towards that goal. And over time, I eventually got there. And I feel very lucky to be at a place where I get to live my passion.
How can naming your superpower help bring clarity to career decisions or creative direction?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think we can get distracted in all of the demands, right? So really getting focused on what is it that not only am I good at, but I love, will really help clarify everything about what you do. And I can give you a personal example of how I realized this in my career. As I mentioned, I realized I didn't love finance, and that I liked marketing and I liked audience. So I started working in research a long time ago, and I loved it, but I still had the curiosity. I worked at big CPG companies where brand management was like the king, right? And research was important at driving and influencing decisions, but the real decision makers were the brand managers themselves, the marketing heads, the brand management team. And I said, well, maybe instead of being in research, I want to be in brand management, because I would get to, make the final call, run the business, and it would put me on a career track where I could maybe one day be, a head of marketing. A lot of brand management companies like a Procter and Gamble or J&J, if you're in brand management, you're on the track to be a CEO someday. So I thought, maybe that's what I want. I really want to be the head. And so I tried it. I worked at a place that gave me that opportunity to rotate into brand management, and I did not like it. I realized through that experience that I really do love audience. I love the strategy. I love understanding why people do the things that they do. I loved the research and the insights process. I love the data. I was a math geek, and so I really love the quant stats. But I tried the other thing. I tried to see if that's where my career was headed. And I decided, no, you know what? I love like the woman on my team that was like, I tried this other thing, but I really love data science. Can I come back? That was me. I tried the other thing. And then I decided, no, I love insights. I love data. And then I got really good at it. I named it. I tried it and I named it. That's what I love. I went back and I got advanced degrees in the data pieces, like really understanding AI, really understanding data science. And once I realized that is what I love, I then deepened my knowledge there, and it's always served me well. And I've continued to be able to grow at companies because of I named my superpower, um, and then focused on it, focused being better at it, focused studying it more, focused, leading teams that did it, and it has guided my career ever since.
You kind of took us on your journey of identifying what your core strength and your passion was. So, once someone identifies their core strength, how can they apply it more intentionally in their daily work?
One, you have to always be humble about what you don't know, right? So once you identify your superpower, there's a lot to do to make it an actual superpower, right? There's a lot to do to become better at it. And I think the intentionality is in remaining humble about what you don't know always. You know, when I decided to go back, I'd always worked in data in traditional, insights and research jobs. And the world of AI started growing, and the world of data science and advanced big data started looming. And traditional researchers don't always study big data and AI and data science. It can be a little intimidating. But I really realized like that is the future. You have to get better at that, even though it's a little scary if you're going to survive in the world of increasing AI and increasing data automation and increasing big data tasks. So I went back to school late in the game. Like I was a mom with 2 kids, a busy life, a busy career. And it took me 2 intense years of balancing my life, of balancing raising kids and to go back and get an advanced degree. And it was a lot of sacrifice, a lot of, flying back from LA I did an advanced degree at Harvard, and I had to fly back, between LA and Boston on several occasions and balance my career demands here at Sony to be able to accomplish that. It was intense, but I knew that I needed to do that if I was going to be a good leader of that in that area, and not get left behind. And so I think that is the intentionality. I really knew I didn't know enough to be a good leader, and I had to learn more. And then focused on that and went and did it through even though it was a lot of sacrifice of time, and it's helped me be a better leader and advance in my career. So I think it's that really recognizing there's always so much to learn. Like never rest on your laurels, even if you're really good. Like don't rest on your laurels. Always be humble about what you don't know. I really chafe at people that pretend that they know everything because it's impossible. And you learn so much more when you're open to what you don't know.
How do you see personal strengths connecting to someone's identity or lived experiences?
Such a good question. So critical. I'm from Mexico City. I'm Latina. Early in my career, I focused on that, meaning like I worked at research companies that focused on multicultural research and Latin American research. And I got to travel all of Latin America, understanding those audiences and helping big companies like Procter and Gamble or like McDonald's understand their audiences in Venezuela and in Mexico and in, Colombia. And I leaned heavy into where I was from and my language skills and really helping people understand those audiences deeper. I felt like I could, as a person coming from Latin America, I could help people understand that better and bridge that gap of commerce and the local markets. And so I fully embraced it. It's always helped me. It really is that experience helped me be better at work. And it still helps me today. It's followed me through. I have, I think, a more, because of where I'm from, a more global orientation. So I've always gotten the opportunity to work more globally. Like my work with Harry Potter took me to Europe, and I was going back a lot between the US and the UK and bridging that. But that was a very global fandom. It has actually one of the biggest fandoms is in Latin America. And so that focus on international, that focus that started with I'm from a Latin country, and so I can help American companies understand Latin America better, then translated to, well, with that global orientation, I'll do more global research because I am already familiar with what that is by focusing on Latin America. So it has really followed me in my career, really helped me in my career to be multilingual, has helped me in my career to have a more broad view of the world. So I think that can be a way to have a superpower that's just yours, by really embracing who you are and where you come from and making that part of your superpower. That's really something that no one can take away from you. It's all you. So for me, it's really helped me to embrace my personal experience and where I'm from in work and in life.
Yeah, I love that. It seems like it's opened up so many doors for you. So that's great.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing. If we take it in a sort of another direction, thinking for leaders and marketers listening, what's one thing you think they should understand about nurturing the next generation's strengths?
Yeah, I think, what's so interesting is like there's so much being written about the generational divide. And I think it's real. I think that, the all the forces that have shaped how different like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, young millennials are really real. Like they're growing up in an entirely different environment with different sets of pressures than what, Gen X and boomers kind of lived through. And so when you study the differences in the generations and really understand the root of what they've lived in their experiences, you see why they're so different, right? They came out of different sorts of pressures in society and different sorts of experiences in society. So for leaders, it's really know your audience, especially for marketers. It's just like in marketing, you study the audience so that you can create better products, better content, better advertising for your audience. You really get to know the target. It's just as important to do that with your staff and with younger people coming into the workplace. Like, know your audience, know your staff, know who are they, what pressures, what matters to them, what surrounds them in their life that makes them different from your experience. And I would say like never like I have been in rooms where an older generation is like rolls their eyes at the younger generation, right? These tropes of like, younger boomers have the work ethic and younger people do not. And I don't like that. I think that there's so much we can learn from Gen Alpha and Gen Z. Like for me, this concept of working, living to work is not the way you enjoy life. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha is all about working to live, and having a balance of life where you're enjoying the world and you're enjoying the life outside of work. I think that's great. And I think the more that an older generation or people in leadership can take the positive cues from what's shaping our younger generations, the more we can maybe get to a place that's actually better for all of us. As Gen Alpha and Gen Z is really into climate change and really into making a better world, why wouldn't we want to embrace that, and sort of help them meet their goals? So I think as long as you have an open mind and try to really understand your staff, understand the people coming in to the workplace and where they're coming from, you can learn a thing or two. They can also learn from you, but we can learn from their attitudes and what shaped them. Like the larger societal forces that have shaped Gen Z and Gen Alpha are really important to understand. It'll help you with marketing, it'll help you with content creation, but it'll also help you with just relating well to the people you work with every day.
Tania, thank you so much. You've given us such a compassionate, grounded lens for thinking about strengths and how to claim them in a world that often pushes us to be everything.
Oh, it's been lovely to talk to you, and I hope it was helpful. And I am very hopeful for what younger generations and people entering the workplace are how they're going to create a better world. I really am I continue to be very hopeful.
I think my biggest takeaway from our conversation with Tania is the fact that I can seek a career involving something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I loved that. I think Tania's career is a great example of being able to combine what you're good at with what you love.
Exactly. I also think what she said about failing forward was really important for me to hear. I hope wherever I end up working after college, the environment is just as supportive and understanding.
Definitely.
And to our listeners, your superpower is already there. You don't have to earn it, You have to notice it and name it and let it guide you.
Even with the focus on self-care and boundaries, there's still so much pressure to constantly improve. But personal growth doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it's recognizing what's already true.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with more conversations about mental health, Gen Z trends, and real-life strategies for thriving in 2026.
Take care and keep the future in mind.